let's talk about altars. Let's just dive in and talk about altars. So we kind of looked at this and said, okay, where would we go? Because I've had these notes that I've been making for quite a while. And I just, I'll get something from the Lord, and you may see me worshiping. All of a sudden, you'll see me grab my phone. I feeling something from the Lord, and I just start writing down stuff. So this was one of those, and I'm like, okay, so writing down stuff that was coming to me, and I'm like, okay, I really want to make this a good sermon series. But we just kind of thought, you know what, we can kind of bring this out in 2 sermons, this week, next week, and you get it from there. God's going to get it in our heads. So let's just kind of look, and we see altars throughout the Old Testament, and some were constructed to be a remembrance or memorial to remember, never to forget. So some were to remember, some were for sacrifice. They would sacrifice animals upon the altar. Some were for worship. Some were for connection. Abraham, we won't be in Abraham, the book of Abraham today, but in case you're wondering, but Abraham, he built 4 altars. In Genesis chapter 12, he built one for praising, to praise the Lord. Again, in Genesis chapter 12, he built one for prayer. See, we need a praise altar in our lives. This is not old school 5,000 years ago. This is real, guys. We need a praise altar. We need a place that we can revert back to and remember what God did. We need to praise our way back to there, praise our way forward from there. So we need an altar that we can come to in prayer. Genesis chapter 12, he did that. Genesis chapter 13, he built an altar to remember what God had promised. And this discourse that we remember very well, all of us, this is the whole Isaac, Abraham, ram, sacrifice your son. He built an altar because God provided for the sacrifice for the altar. So in Genesis chapter 22. So, but I want you to just make a note with me. I'm just, you may know this, just in case you don't. I just want to bring it out, bring it to our attention. There are no, God never actually built any altars himself. I don't know if you noticed that, but God never built any altars himself. Man built those altars. Man is the one that built those altars. Now, God would instruct man many times to build the altars and how, even the dimensions sometimes. But see, here's the thing. It's never God's job to build an altar to himself. I mean, think about this. Why should God build an altar to himself and then make us worship at it? That's not a relationship. That's robotic. I'm going to build an altar to myself and you're going to worship me. And I mean it. It's like, hey, listen, it's like, when you first get married, you say, hey, listen, you're going to love me. And I mean you're going to love me, okay? And I don't want to hear anything else about it. So it's like, okay, I'm going to love you because I'm drawn to love you, not because you make me love you. But there's one more thing I want to notice again, is that there are no altars mentioned in the New Testament being built. They're all built and told about in the Old Testament. The New Testament, there's a reason, and we're going to dive into that next week. That's next week's sermon. So in the Old Testament, altars were built. They kind of got started outside. When we first see altars being constructed, our patriarchal period there, we start seeing some altars being constructed. We just looked at Abraham there a minute ago, and we find that they were built outside. There's a reason why. It's because they really had established a place, a home, a facility, or anything like that. Then as we see them become a nation, as the Israelites began to come together, they began to start using 2 different things. One was a tent, and they were kind of nomadic. They would travel in tents. So we see the altar inside tents. And then when we see Jerusalem being established, thanks to David, King David, Jerusalem is being established as the headquarters, the national headquarters, the national capital, so to speak, of Judea and Israel. So basically, That's their headquarters. So they build a temple. Well, they built altars within the temple. See, here's the thing. Some of these are stationary. They're not moving. They're not meant to go anywhere. This church facility, we're meant to be here stationary to worship the Lord, to build altars. When we leave here, we're meant to be in tents. We're meant to take the presence of the Lord and move him. We're called to move the presence. So sometimes we need to make sure that we have a real clear vision on what God is saying. I mean, where God is saying we are to be tents and where God's saying we are to be temples. Because inside those is the heart, and it's the heart of the worship. So today, the New Testament temple of the Holy Spirit is inside you and I. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and the heart is the altar within that. So we're going to look later on that. So I'm just going to kind of stop right there boldly and abruptly, and we're just going to start. We're going to talk about January. Do you realize January was cold? It seems like it was only yesterday that January was here. So it seems like it was like 2 days ago. But January, here's the thing about it. I don't like it. I just don't care for it. I don't like being cold. And typically, I don't know what it is. It's like the weather pattern has a click or a time stamp on Christmas. And as soon as Christmas is over, it's like you better look out because we think it get cold. And then it goes cold, and then you're like, I'm dying. And then all of a sudden we see and hear the sand cranes migrate north, and we're like, praise the Lord. We're back to normal. So, and I watch those. I watch them like crazy. So anyway, I don't care for January. I didn't like January. One reason, because it's cold, it's dreary, it's overcast. I don't see a lot of excitement there. Here's what I did like about January. We came together in prayer and fasting. We fasted, we prayed, and we rejoiced together. We shared our wins together. We shared our victories. We shared our prayer concerns together. So we came together as a team, and we went into an intense prayer and fasting. Some of you prayed and fasted harder than others. Some of you fasted things that you couldn't, it was hard. Some of you fasted things that weren't as hard. I've done both. I've had hard fast, and I've had fast. I'm like, Lord, is this all you're telling me? Because it seems it's not hard. But here's the thing. Pastor Sam and I were talking, and it's like, it's not that. One of the things I felt the Lord calling me to fast this past time was sugar. Well, here's the thing. Every time I wanted some M&Ms, I'm reminded that God's good. Man, how good is God? I didn't have to go without a meal. I did fast meals too, but I didn't go without a meal and have to think that. If it's Facebook, every time I'm tempted to get on Facebook, man, God is good. It's just a reminder that, hey, Lord, I'm dedicating these 3 weeks to focus on you. So here's the thing, though. Man, we've had a good time. We've had a spiritual high. We came in last Wednesday night, and we had a time now, guys. If you have not been to a Wednesday night, let me just give you a shameless plug. Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday night, won't be a worship night, but there's a special speaker, and I want you to be here. You will not want to miss this, so make it priority. And be right here in this sanctuary, so we want you to be here. But if you weren't here last Wednesday night, you need to make sure that you clear your schedule when we have a worship night, because we finally told everybody, listen, we've kept you about 20 minutes. If you've got to get your kids and go, please go. We were another hour before we were finished. But, we let everybody go that needed to go, and it was just a good time of worship, celebrating what God had done together. But not every journey remains on the mountain. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Tina and I, we love to ride our motorcycle. She doesn't have one. Well, she does. We have one together. She's the back rider. And we disappear. Can't answer the phone. We love doing this. And we love to go to the mountains. But here's what we notice. When you get to the mountain, you don't stay up there. It comes back down. So no journey stays on the mountaintop. Emotionally, we're not going to stay on the mountaintop. We can spiritually, but we can't emotionally. You and I are not going to emotionally stay on a mountaintop with the Lord all the time. We're going to feel like we're just, maybe we're back to mundane. But we have to realize where we are. See, here's the thing. At some point, we're going to have to navigate the dry areas. We're going to have to navigate the dry seasons. What gets us through the season of drought? I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. It's the time that we remember when God sent the rain. And during the drought, we need to remember, because of that, I know he's going to do it again. See, here's the thing. I'm going to confess something to you. I don't like January weather, but I do like July weather. See, you may say, well, who likes that? You have to cut that stuff open and walk through it because it surrounds you and sticks to you. It's 1,000 degrees in Tennessee, and the humidity's 1,000%, and it's awful. I like it. I like it because the trade-off could be January, and I'm good. But if you notice, we get a lot of times we get into that July area, and we start seeing the grass getting dry. We start seeing more of a high-pressure weather pattern over southeastern United States, so we don't get a lot of rain. You know what gets us through it is we look back and we say, okay, I remember when it was raining in May. And it's going to rain again in September, October, probably not that much, but it's going to start raining again in November. I know it's going to happen. It's going to get me through this time. So I'm very comfortable with it. In other words, I have to be good because I know what God did and I know what God's going to do. So we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis how good God is. Because our natural self's not going to want to do that. We're going to naturally think of us. We're not going to naturally think of how good God is. See, we also need to remind our children and our grandchildren, do you realize what God has done? Do you realize what God has done? Don't you come tell me God's not going to do it again. Because I'm here to tell you, he did it already. I'm not a good candidate for your negativity. So I'm not buying it. So I need to make sure my grandchildren know, do you realize what God has done? And you realize that I'm not backing up on what he's about to do? You know, I've walked through one of the biggest seasons of victory this past month that I could ever imagine. You know what? I'm waiting on the next one. So, yeah, I'm going to quote Coach Beaujeu. What's better than 5 crawfish sandwiches or crawfish dinners? What's better than 1 crawfish dinner? 5 crawfish dinners. So I want more from Waterboy, by the way. So you know what, Lord, you know what? I don't want just us to be restored. I want all of us to be restored. So I'm looking forward. So I'm excited. But we have to remind ourselves that the wilderness is not going to last forever. Your wilderness is not going to last forever. Everybody around us is not on an emotional high with Jesus right now. We may be, we may not be, but we have to remind ourselves and remind everybody else, this wilderness time is not going to last forever. See, altars, when we look at these altars, let's kind of see what it takes to build one. Because what would happen when the altars were built is the presence of God would visit and make manifest with the presence of man. So the presence of God would just kind of thin those waters and those walls would kind of come down. And there was just me and the Lord, just Elijah and the Lord, just Abraham and the Lord, just the nation of Israel and the Lord. Sometimes we need to make sure that we're just in a place to where there is nothing that wants to inhibit us from that presence. So we could dive in. We could go weeks and weeks and weeks, but I'm going to dive into two sermons. And I want to start Joshua. You know I like this dude. If you don't know, I'm going to confess to you, I like Joshua. So let's jump into Joshua chapter 4, verses 2 and 3. And I want you to see what's going on here. They've been waiting for this moment their whole lives. Their families have been waiting. This is a promise that goes all the way back to Abraham. I'm going to give you a promised land flowing with milk and honey. I mean, your offspring, a guy that has no children, by the way, your offspring will be so numerous, you won't be able to count them like the stars in the sky. So let's begin to start reading this. They have got to cross the Jordan. They can't get to the promise, but what divides the wilderness from the promise is the Jordan River. So they're doing this Jordan crossing. And what has happened is they've hoisted the presence of the Lord, the ark of the Lord, and the priests have made their way out into the waters, and they've parted. See, I think sometimes we're waiting for the waters to part before we move. See, I think we need to remind ourselves sometimes God's waiting on us to move before he parts the waters. So in other words, I'm waiting for my breakthrough. Well, I'm waiting for you to wait in. Well, I want my breakthrough. I want your breakthrough too. But I'm waiting on you to wait in. Joshua said, get your rear ends in the middle of this water. Stand there. Watch it recede both to the right and to the left, to the upper waters and the lower waters. And the nation of Israel, 2 million plus people walk across. Okay, so here finds us at chapter 4, verses 2. Take 12 men. This is while this water is still parted. Take 12 men from each tribe, take a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan. Take a stone out, 12 of those, and take it to the place, from the place where the priest stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in a place where you lodge tonight. So if you notice, he says the place where you lodge tonight. In other words, you ain't lodging in the wilderness anymore. You ain't in the wilderness anymore, Toto. We're going to the promised land. It looks different and feels different. You know, this is different than that. This is rocky and sandy and dry and scorpions and lizards and everything. And when they went across, do you realize, wow, what is this grassy stuff? Feels like carpet. Carpet won't come around for another 3,000 or 4,000 years, and I kind of already know what it feels like. This is carpety feeling. This is grass. This is lush. And I mean, this is how, from here to here, it's different. But the wilderness is always wanting to draw us back. Always wanting to draw us back. So they've crossed. They're about to cross over. They're in the middle of this cross. It's been 470 years since they went into Egypt. Not since the promise was given. 470 years since they went into Egypt. 430 of that in captivity and 40 of that wandering in the wilderness. There's nobody left that was alive during this time. No, there's only 2 people, Caleb and that is recorded, Caleb and Joshua, that remembers what it's like to be a slave in Egypt. Nobody else knows anything other than God. God has led them, he's fed them, he's clothed them, he's sheltered them. They don't know anything else but 100% dependency upon the Lord. That's pretty cool. It is literally like a 6-month-old child. That child knows nothing except what those parents do for it. That's all it knows. I'll give you an example. Me and the girls, Tina, we're lamb farmers now. We're sheep farmers. We have 2 lambs. And we have to bottle feed them. And one of them, his name's Pickle. He's the little one. Pickle thinks I'm his mama. And I mean, he's literally Bo Peep. I cannot move without this thing under me. And he never shuts up. He follows me everywhere I go. And I mean, it's like a nursery rhyme. And I'm like, you know, they're just pretty and white. And here's I just have a simple request. Can you please get this white demon somewhere else? Or we're both going to have broken arms and legs. So the thing is, he is so 100% dependent upon me. He will follow them too, but I am there more and I feed them more. And he's like, "Dad, my mama coming." So he loves me. So he's totally they have been totally so dependent upon the Lord. They know nothing else. We're going to dive a little bit into this on Wednesday night. So this is the long-awaited promise they've been waiting for. This is what they've been waiting for. The ark is in the middle. The water has been separated. The ground is dry. All we have to do is walk past the ark, the presence of the Lord, and we have freedom. These are the people who have nothing in them. No sin whatsoever is in them. They've been walking with the Lord. Can you imagine you and I trying to pass the presence of the Lord, the tangible, 100% cast you dead presence of the Lord in order to get to our promise? I'm good, dude. Because if I walk across through there and the thoughts that I have had comes out and hits the ground and people hear them, we're all going to die. I mean, everything. There's nothing but the purest of intentions that gets to pass that presence. I love this sermon. I've preached it before. So, but when you exit this boundary, this crossing, this barrier, man, I'm telling you, that's yours. Think about it. You have never had a land of your own, ever. You have never had anything. You have been slaves. You have been wanderers. You have been nomadic. You have been everything but a landowner. Now you're one of the largest landowners in the world. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what do? We pull stone out and we memorialize it. God says, get you some stones, pull them out, one per person, per tribe, so 12 of them. Get them out and build an altar so we can remember what God has done. One man, one stone. Get them on your shoulders. The word says they hoisted them up on their shoulders. In other words, we're not going to walk out there and go, I think I'm going to get that one. I'm coming with mine, got it in my pocket. No, it's got to take some effort. We've got to have it. It's got to be so big that we have to get it on our shoulders to support it. Can't even carry it like this. So, they built an altar of remembrance to remember what God done for them, what God did and what God is going to do. They built that. They did exactly what God said. Can you imagine the magnitude of this? Let me ask a question. How many times has God made a way where there seemed to be no way in our lives? How many times has He done that? So let me ask the second question. What are we doing to make sure we never forget it? What are we doing to make sure our children never forget it, our families never forget it, the people around us are so sick and tired of hearing it, they're never going to forget it? What are we doing to make sure that we remember and memorialize what God did? Do you know why? You know what we're doing nowadays? We're putting literally people in the ground and building a nice stone with their name on it to remember them. A person. We should be building big old things everywhere. You know what? Start putting them in your phone. Start logging them. Start writing them on your calendar. God did this today because I need to remember what God did. So, they're literally about to acquire and get inherited or given to them about 300,000 square miles of property. I'm going to be honest with you. Michael Jordan doesn't have a house that big or property that. Bill Gates ain't got that much property. So they're about to get 300,000 square miles of property. I'm pretty sure the 99% of them aren't building 100 feet off the Jordan River's edge. In time, they're going to infiltrate that land. They're going to go to the mountains. Caleb's going to run the giants out or kill them one. He's going to have his mountain. They're going to go into the hedges and the highways. They're going to go into the nooks and the crannies, and they're going to inhabit that place, and they're going to be a long way from what happened here. A long way. Do you realize the farther we get away from what God did, the easier it is to forget what He did? So we don't need to forget what God has done. In years to come, it's going to be easy. See, we have to remember that. Let's just jump into verses 6 and 7. Let me just kind of paint you a modern day picture according to Joshua's story here. Someday, there's going to be a bunch of buses pull up with a field trip. And a bunch of fifth graders are going to get out, and they're going to walk over, and they're going to surround. They're going to say, "Get around, kids! Get around, kids! Get around!" No, hey, Kenzie, come over here. I promise you. And they're going to get everybody around, all the kids, and they're going to be looking at some stones. Let's just say it's this. What are we looking at? So we need to make sure we never forget. Do you realize what we're looking at? You realize what we're envisioning right now? Do you realize what this represents? People will drive and they will pull into these big parking areas one day. Symbolically speaking, these big parking areas with these big placards that tells what happened on this site. Do you realize what happened on this site? And you're going to be reading it, and your wife's going to be going, "Can we go? I'm reading the history. We need to see the largest ball of mud. We got to go. It's going to get dark. I want to read the history. Does it really matter? It's Jewish history. I want to read it." That's our story, by the way. So anyway, Tina's like, "You going to read that whole placard?" Well, somebody took time to put it here, didn't they? Let's read it. So anyway, so all of this is going to happen. And people are going to stand there and they're going to say, "Well, what are we looking at, and why is this big pile of rocks here?" Because your fathers, your forefathers, your ancestors walked across dry land. God opened the waters up, and they walked across on dry land so you could have 300,000 square miles of ownership. And that's where it started. Don't you ever forget where it started. What do these stones mean, grandfather? That sounds cool. Maybe I'll write that book someday. So, but what happens when there is no more land to conquer? Giants are all ran out. I mean, they're gone. They're scared. They're killed. They're hiding in caves. What happens when there's no more land left to conquer? We're not in battle right here at the altar anymore because everything's good. What happens when we just kind of, man, I've been fasting and praying almost the whole month of January, and you know what? I just want to put it neutral and let it coast. See, you guys don't have a clue what that means. That was a gear when I was growing up. That was a working gear, because when you didn't have any more money than I did and you were having to figure out where you're going to get your next $5 worth of gas, you put it neutral a lot. A whole lot. And so, it's like 1, 2, neutral. Look over at your buddy. And you wait for him to take his drink, and then you go, free, and then he drops it all over him, and like, yeah. You need to be looking at me. And you know what? You may think that you may wonder, can I take a car and can I start at Sunset Rock and coast in neutral all the way across this bridge? You can. I've done it. And so, and you know what? When you come right up through here, you're like, I'm not going to make it. But you know what? You're like, we made it last Friday night. We're making it again this Friday night. So, here's the thing. Sometimes we just want to put it in neutral and coast. Now's not the time to coast. I'm tired. You know what? I've given 3 weeks of my life. Do I need to give more? You know what? What's God worth? What's my relationship with Him worth? What's my connection to the one who can move mountains and open seas? What's my connection worth? Because I want to keep diving in is what I want to do. Because I'm going to tell you something. I saw Him do it, and I'm going to see Him do it again. So I'm not just going to live on one victory. I'm going to see more. So let's just. Here's the question: is, what are we going to do when we get to that place? I just don't feel like it right now. Let's look at verse 9. We're going to verse 9. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan. Now, don't confuse this. You say, okay, wait. He took stones out, but then he took the stones back. No. He took stones out and built an altar to never forget. Let's continue. In the place where the priest, so he took stones into the river, where the place where the priest bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood. So, and they are there to this day. So when this was written, those stones were there to this day. I'm going to pretty much go out on a limb here and say, I don't think my word's going to lie to me. They're still there. So here's what I want you to know. I'm confused. Did they take stones out while the water was open and build an altar? Yeah, they did. But did they take those back? No, they took different ones, and they took 12 of those back, or stones, and they took those back and they put them in the midst of the river. And they're still there to this day. Well, I'm a little confused here though. So why would Joshua build an altar that no one would ever see? Because as quick as that was finished and everybody was over, the water come right back. So why would Joshua build an altar that no one's ever going to see? Because of the drought. See, when you and I get to a place to where we just feel like we want to coast, that's why those stones are there. Because I don't know if you've noticed in Middle Tennessee, if you're new to the area, you'll see. We start getting around June, and our streams kind of start drying up. They stop running, contributing to the river. There's not a lot of rain, so there's no runoff into the river. And you notice that the rivers begin to start lowering. And if you go to Center Hill, I grew up on Center Hill Lake. That was our big vacation spot. That's where we went. So, I could take you all over. I could take you to places in the summer that you could see some foundations of of homes that were there when they dammed it up. You can't see them during the winter because the water's higher. You know, I can take you to Sligo Dam, and I can show you right in some areas right there where there's some stones that will show when the water's down, because I remember it well. But see, when the water gets really lower, I mean, when times get dry, water gets lower, and at some point in time, some of those people from Israel are going to want to say, you know what, this is tough. I didn't know we were going to have to fight these Jericho people. I mean, you take us out of the wilderness, and now we got to fight Jericho people, and their walls are impenetrable. I can't do this. I'm going back. And when we want to give up and go back to the wilderness, you know what? That's the time of drought. That's in the season of drought. That's when those stones are going to be showing. When I kind of dove into this, I asked the question, why would they be there? Because at some point in time, that water level is going to fall, and some of those stones are going to be visible. And somebody's got to walk back up there in their driest time. You and I, what gets us through that desert time? What gets us through that 2.5 years of dryness, of desert, of awfulness? It's knowing that he's going to. Knowing what he did and knowing what he's going to. If you come to try to tell me that God's not going to do what he says he's going to do, you've come too late. You can't convince me. So why would Joshua build an altar where nobody would ever see it? Because the times of drought are tough. And we need to see that. And when somebody here's our natural habit, our natural go-to. When times get tough, most of the time we will draw straight back to the wilderness. That's the place we want to go to. Because it's just a place that we feel like we can hide. Maybe it's not challenging. It's a place where we can coast. But the wilderness is not where God meant for us to stay. It's where he led us out of. And the promise is way better. Usually it's going to be a little tougher, and it's going to take some work. And we got to be obedient to the Lord. So what do we do in these drought times? Because we're going to hit these seasons. What do I do right now? You start looking for the stones. Don't ever forget what God did. Start looking for the stones. Luke chapter 19, Jesus has this experience with a donkey where he rides in on it. This is the pinnacle of accolades for the Lord. He didn't get a lot, but this is the pinnacle. This is the celebration he deserved. He's riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, on the colt of a donkey. Everybody's shouting his name, and in 5 days less, he's going to be crucified and die. And the disciples are shouting his name. Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna. Praise be to the King. And you know what? People didn't like that. Pharisees said, can you make these guys hush? And this is what he said. You know, they're going to hit a dry spell here in about 5 days. They're going to hit a drought, a season, a time of drought. And it's going to be tough on them. They need to know those stones in that riverbed are still there. They're going to need to know that. Because if I don't allow them to cry out right now, then the stones themselves will cry out for them. So you know what? I think just taking a little bit of a lesson from that is those stones are still there. And in times of drought, we've got to fall back on our altars that we built, our prayer altars that we built, our praise altars that we built, our worship altars that we built, our altars of remembrance that we built. If we don't fall back on those, we're not going to ever expect what God's about to do. We're going to stay in that dry spot. These disciples are getting ready to see their Savior, their best friend, their prophet, their priest, their king, crucified right in front of their eyes. They thought he was untouchable. They've watched him disappear. They've watched him speak empowerment. They've watched him heal and raise people from the dead. And now they're going to see him die on a cross in front of them. They're going to be in their drought. And they're going to have to remember back about 4 or 5 days ago when we walked into, when he rode into this city. I got to remember that he's the king. And I don't know everything, but I just got to remember this. So, the more the temperature rises, the harder we're going to have to look for the stones. Maybe we're going to have to stand there for a little while and say, look, you know what? I'm not moving, but I'm going to stay right here. So let me just say it this way. I don't know if I'm talking to 1 or 20 or 21. Somebody's struggling. You're at a spot right now, you're struggling. And you may walk out of here and carry that struggle, but these words may reverberate, and I pray they do if you don't respond today and right here in the next few minutes. I pray they do. But see, here's the thing. You're struggling because you don't feel like you feel like you're dry. You know, people will say, I just feel like I'm just not getting fed. Well, try sitting down at the table today for lunch and just sit there and expect people to feed you. It's your job to feed you. So you know, I don't feel like I'm getting fed. Eat. I don't think we're hungry enough. My pastor would say, you know, if you ain't eating, you're not hungry enough. And you know what? When we get into that place where we feel like we're at the pinnacle of our struggle, we're starving. But we're still going to run to the desert and try to figure out what lizard we can eat. Instead, we need to be coming to the place where God told us to build an altar and remember what I did. Right here may be the altar you build today. It may happen right here. Because I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. Pastor Alex, a few years ago, COVID was rampant. They weren't sure if he's going to live or not. Prayer chains going out everywhere. You've come too late to tell me that God's not in the healing business. You know, I'll give you another name. Aaron Lissing. When his father told me, I'm watching my son, I literally was watching my son die. That kid runs around here like he owns this place. You've come too late to try to convince me that God is not building altars. When their father, I mean, we have a lot of Lissing breakthroughs, guys. When their father has a stroke and he may not ever walk or talk again, and now you can't shut him up. You come too late to tell me that God is not going to do what he's going to do. You come too late. We built altars and we have victories that we can envision. We know what they look like. So I may be in this time where I'm just not super excited about what God, about my relationship right now. It's okay. You have a relationship with your wife or your husband or your children or your girlfriend or boyfriend. They don't always look good, guys. Trust me. You married him and you're 3 years into it and you look over and he's got the recliner kicked back. He's got one sock hanging half off. The other one's got a hole in it. He's picking his nose and eating popcorn and you can't get enough of him. That's what love looks like. That's what relationship looks like. That's my man right there and I love him. I'm not going to give up on him because he's not that great right now. I'm not that excited right now. So the thing is we've got to build these altars and remember what God did. So I want you to stand with me. And I'm going to ask you to build some altars. I want to ask you to build some altars. People have asked me, so what is that? What's that you wear on your arm? What is that? And I'm like, that's my altar. That's my altar of promise. For a long time, it's my altar of promise. This is the last thing that two of my granddaughters bought me for Christmas. It's the last thing it's just a simple little thing. I like it. And I put it on. And I'm never taking it off. So why do you wear that? Because I pray for them every time I see it. Because I didn't see them for 2.5 years. Because I didn't see them for 2.5 years, and every time I looked at that, I remember what you have done. And devil, you're not going to come tell me that he's not going to do it. So now that they're home, why do I wear it now? Because I can remember every time I look at it, don't tell me God's not going to do what he says he's going to do. Because I'm not buying it. So when I have more victories here I'm waiting for, sorry, I'm getting them. I'm getting them because I want 5 crawfish dinners. So I want to ask you right now, let's do it this way. You're struggling. You're struggling. I don't know. I'm just at this place. I feel like I'm in the July middle of all of this. I just don't feel like I'm excited about the Lord. I want you to come and build an altar. I want you to find somebody. If you want to come here and find one of our prayer altar workers and pray with them privately, fine. If you want to come to these steps and pray or anywhere, that's fine. If you want a team praying with you, that's fine. But let's remember, we've got to build altars. And today's the day we start. So we're going to sing. You know what the song says? It says this: we have to know that He moves mountains. He made a way where there's no way. I believe I'll see it again. And I believe I'm going to see He's going to do it again. He makes a way where there's no way. No way. And when you're thinking about that, you're envisioning, you're seeing, there's no way it's ever going to happen. Don't tell me that. You've come too late. So let's sing. Help me sing. I want to invite you. We're going to give you a time to pray too in just a second, so don't leave. I want to invite you. Please. Let's build an altar. Think of this word. I believe I'll see you do it again. Where there was no way. And I believe I'll see you do it again. You move the mountains. And I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way. I'm going to tell you, first time I ever heard us sing this song in this church, I was over here. I'm always over there. And I remember looking at those words, tears rolling down my face, because I just wanted to see these 2 little girls. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to, that's all I wanted to see. I just want to see them. I believe You'll make a way where there's no way. And I believe I'm going to see it again. You have to believe upon belief. You have to have faith upon faith. You and I have to see what somebody else can't see. And we've got to just go hard after what has not happened yet, but it's going to happen. We've got to fall back on that altar and expect the next one to be better. So let's sing it one more time. I'll invite you to come. We'll keep you but another minute. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me. You've never failed me. You know, I don't even like that word yet. That implies that He could. So let's leave that part off. You know what? I want you and I to pray a sinner's prayer. If you're in here visiting today, I want you to pray with me that the Lord, you may say, I don't even know what we're talking about or what we're praying about. You know what? I don't really know.